Well, here we are again. Actually, we're always here, and we are welcoming you to another episode, a fine episode of Awareness Explorers. I'm Jonathan Robinson, and I am here with my trusty sidekick.
Brian Tom O'Connor.
There you go. Well, it's always good to see your face, and am, I'm not going to use the word excited. What's another word for excitement?
Um,
Thrilled,
Thrilled,
eager,
beside yourself.
beside myself. Well, that's one of the techniques we explore in Awareness Explorers, how to get beside yourself. And sometimes that's very useful because our topic is fear and anxiety and how to deal with that when you are an awakening being, not being like a garbanzo bean, but awakening being. I sometimes say that wrong. Anyways, we all have fear and anxiety, and it's important to know how to deal with it effectively because you only have so much brain power, and if it's all going to fear and anxiety, there's no room left for awakening. But as always, I like to ask you, Brian, when I bring up a topic, what's the first impression or thoughts you have about it?
My first thoughts about fear and anxiety are, I think, the mistaken idea that somehow we shouldn't have them, that they shouldn't be here, that we should never experience them, and that the idea that when we become awakened or enlightened, we will no longer experience emotions that we don't want. But I don't think that's really true. It has more to do with the idea that any emotion is welcome, and when we stop our strategies to prevent them, they come and they go more quickly.
I'm afraid I agree with you. I like to disagree with you, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to say I agree with you. You know, awakened people do have emotions. They have what some people might call uncomfortable or negative emotions, but their relationship with them changes. And I actually have a prop for any YouTube viewers who might be watching this, but for those who are listening, let me describe my prop. It is a white piece of paper, you know, a normal 8.5, 11 piece of paper, um, but it has a black dot the size of a dime on it. For anybody who's looking at it, looks like this.
Hmm.
Now, imagine that black dot represents your biggest fear, anxiety, or problem. And it's in this spacious white piece of paper, just like our biggest fear and anxiety is uh, something that tends to take a lot of our attention from this big, open, expansive consciousness. Well, most people, their relationship with that black dot, that fear or anxiety or problem, is that they have their eyeball right on it. And they're busy saying, oh my God, it's just completely black. It's dark and it goes on forever. And that's all I can see. And part of awakening is moving that black dot away from your eyeball so that you see it, maybe you experience it, but it's not taking up your entire experience of life. So, what do you think of my prop, Brian?
I love it. I think that's such a perfect metaphor because it really is the white background. If we shift our attention from that black dot and the dot of emotions like fear and anxiety, they are attention hogs. They just say, look at me, and don't think of anything else because I have something that needs to be fixed. And you're right, we put our eyeball on it and it's huge. It takes up our whole field of vision. But when we shift to the background in which it's appearing, that's where happiness and acceptance and allowing and joy are.
Mm-hmm. And you don't even have to shift all the way to the background of awareness if you just get a little bit of perspective. You know, sometimes you're caught in fear and anxiety, and then you know your dog comes along and licks you, and that gives you some perspective.
That's right. And another thing that you can do is when the black dot of fear and anxiety is taking up your entire field of vision, is just to ask yourself, What else is in awareness right now? I mean,
Right.
there's the sounds around you, there's the sensations in your body, there's sights, there's breezes, there's all sorts of stuff that's there, and the fear and anxiety becomes smaller proportionally.
Yeah, as we've talked about in other episodes, it's what we call the awareness two-step. You know, trying to get your eyeball off that problem, that black dot. What else is in awareness is a good first step. Gives you a little bit of perspective, and then it might be, and then what is this all appearing in? Can give you the biggest perspective is spaciousness. But before we go into different ideas and methods about this, I think it's important that we define fear and anxiety, especially what the difference is between them.
Hmm.
And I have a proposal to see if you agree with, and that is that anxiety is kind of something that's in your head. It's like a thinking process. You know, you're thinking about the future, you're thinking what might happen, but it's mostly a head phenomena of being caught up in some kind of story. Whereas fear is more something that strikes me as visceral. It's like your heart races, your body is responding like with adrenaline. And they're both on kind of a continuum, but they are in a way different things. And I think to some extent they have to be handled differently.
Yes, I can see that distinction, although I experience anxiety viscerally as well. If I'm anxious about something, I can feel that gnawing tightness in the pit of my stomach or my heart beating a little faster. The distinction that I make about them, I agree with you, though, that anxiety is created by our mind. It's our thoughts that are creating it. And our thinking triggers the body sensation or the actual emotion. And the distinction I make is that fear is about clear and present danger. It's about something that's happening right now. Oh my God, there's a truck coming and I'm in the middle of the crosswalk. I better run. I better get out of the way. Or you're in a jungle and a lion comes. And anxiety is all about the future.
Mm-hmm.
It's never about what's happening here and now. It's all about what might happen that, or memories of something in the past that happened that you want to prevent again from happening in the future. But it seems very future oriented. And as you say, I agree, it's thought based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like your distinctions, and I think between us we have one great mind. We each provide half a brain, and I hope you're not insulted that I called you half a brain. But
Never.
together, I like how spiritual seekers, when they talk to each other, if they're open, can kind of broaden their perspective, which is really what our podcast is about. You know, exploring ideas and methods because we all get lost in one way of looking at it, and it's useful to broaden that perspective and um, see that there's more. There's We're all here to help each other and give a piece of the puzzle. Um, Another aspect of fear and anxiety that I've noticed is that we often barely know what it is we're afraid or anxious about. That it's kind of an unnamed fear. And unnamed fears tend to invade your life a lot. Whereas if you can name it precisely, I think that's a important part of either having less fear and anxiety or creating some distance. Let me give you an example. Have you noticed that there's kind of like a polarized political situation in the world nowadays?
Really? I didn't notice that.
Yeah, well, you might want to get this podcast called Awareness Explorers so you would notice things like that. Uh,
I am being so
I
bad
know you're not.
and
I know.
sarcastic, and which I usually try to avoid, but there you go.
Well, it has brought up a fair amount of fear in me and anxiety.
Yes, me too.
Um, and I, without it being labeled, it was like, just this free floating fear and anxiety. And then when I got down to what exactly am I afraid of or anxious about? And one of the things was like our entire system can fall apart, that it's getting so many hits in different ways. And then when I looked at that, I kind of did the Byron Katie thing. I said, is that likely? Is that even true? You know, is our system really going to fall apart? And I said, no, that's not going to happen, in my opinion. So that's an example of when I really defined the fear and anxiety, it actually gave me some perspective from it. This makes sense?
It does, absolutely.
Have you had that experience with naming fears or
Yes.
anxiety?
Yes, and I think you're right. The unnamed fears seem to overtake you more. And when you name the fear, and then when you ask yourself, well, is that happening now? Often the answer is no.
Yeah. That's another way of kind of defining it.
Yes,
Is it actually happening?
exactly. So I think both of those are really useful. Naming it and
Yeah.
asking the question, is it happening now? Am I safe right now? Yes.
Right. Right. And even in, say, the political sphere, where um, it does sometimes bring up a feeling of non-safety.
That's right.
And am I safe now? Well, obviously I'm safe now, and I've been safe for the last 60 years. So pretty good track record. It's kind of like if every time you do something, like eat, I've never missed a meal because of lack of money. So it's a
Right.
pretty good bet. I'm probably going to be able to do that for the rest of my life as well.
Hmm.
So naming fears, defining them is sometimes a step towards putting them in perspective and allowing you to not have your eye on that black dot.
Right.
Because basically we do have relationships with these things, and an awakened person, as best I can tell, their relationship. Well, first, let me speak about something I consider myself quite an authority on, and that is having a screwed up relationship with it, a non awakened relationship with it. And that is, it gets your attention, you focus on it, uh, etc. And there isn't that much perspective. But it seems like fully awakened people don't have resistance to such things. They don't label them as negative, and it kind of passes through them like Chinese food. Uh, Whereas when I'm not awakened, I resist it, and therefore it kind of lessens the flow of it moving through me.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think that it's the resistance that is actually worse. It really the sometimes the secondary emotion around these so-called negative emotions are worse. The resistance is often more painful than the pain or fear. The idea that this shouldn't be happening is a cause of much more suffering than the actual pain or fear.
Yeah, yeah. And that's basically the non enlightened stance towards most things. This shouldn't be happening,
Right.
you know, whether it be the weather or the politics or the pain in my body or how your mate is. It's like our mantra.
You said it. You really put it in a nutshell.
Yeah. So if you can develop a relationship that is open, allowing, and knowing that everything changes, so it's not like the fear and anxiety is necessarily going to stick around, forever, then it becomes part of the flow of sensations moving through you.
Absolutely. And two responses to that. Very important that you talked about the flow of sensations, because when we can actually notice the sensations in our bodies that come along with fear and anxiety, then we can drop into just noticing how it feels. It takes us away from the mind, it takes us away from thought and from the story, because it's the story that can spin and keep it going almost indefinitely. But the body, when you experience it in the body wordlessly, that's really, I think, one of the best methods to use. And the
Yeah.
second best method that occurred to me that is related to what you just said is something that I call SBFD. And I often use that when I'm feeling something that I really think I ought not to be feeling, or I really don't want to be feeling this. Well, so big freaking deal. I'm
Hmm.
feeling I'm feeling anxious now. So is that
Th-
really the most terrible thing that could be happening? So
well, so
so
that could be the
feeling that way.
replacement mantra for this shouldn't be happening to so big freaking deal.
Yep, exactly. They're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, yeah. And, unfortunately, human beings love stories.
Yeah.
When you think about it, and when I read this in a book, and I thought it was very interesting that there's only been one movie ever made. There's only one plot. And
What
I'll
is it?
give you the plot. Well, no,
Yeah,
there's actually two, but
there's two.
they're the same for 90% of the movie.
Uh-huh.
Some person, protagonist, is faced with a challenge, and they do what they can to overcome the challenge,
Hmm.
and they either succeed or they fail.
Right.
There, we just defined every movie ever made.
Every movie ever made in the history of drama, back
Yeah.
all the way back to the Greeks.
Sometimes we find that's how we perceive our lives. Oh, we got this challenge. I have to overcome the challenge, and then everything will be okay. But that's so different than how life actually comes to us. Life does not come to us as challenges, it comes to us one moment at a time. And then we create stories that we think about and how we have to vanquish this challenge or we can't vanquish this challenge. And as people awaken, they start to step out of these stories of fear, anxiety, needing to vanquish a challenge, and they just experience life more as you here, I'm here. This is a neat moment. We're alive.
Hmm.
And so I notice in my own developing awakening, when I hear people getting lost in their dramas and their stories, I sometimes go, yeah, 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 inside. I try to be empathetic, but, it's kind of like, yeah, that's a good drama, as dramas go, that's a good one. But remember, right now, we're both okay.
Yep. And in some way, I mean, challenges do come even to the awakened person. And even awakened people have challenges in their lives that arise. But the difference is when a challenge arises, which may just be something simply practical, an obstacle that falls in
Mm-hmm.
your path, um, when you realize that it's just another thing that's arising in awareness now among many, many other things, and you're not spinning a story about how it shouldn't be there. In other words, you're allowing it to be there, and you're allowing whatever feelings you have around it to be there, then you tend to rise to the challenge in a sort of intuitive, automatic way. And things seem to work out better. So it's not like all challenges go away and life all of a sudden becomes easy. It's that the story about how life is hard leaves, and
Mm-hmm.
we face the difficulties more gracefully.
Yeah, and more one moment at a time rather than hit trying to swallow the elephant full.
Exactly. Good one.
Yeah. Yeah, I like um in Awareness Explorers and outside of Awareness Explorers, I have a little bit of hobby, which is talking to very awakened people. So I was just at a workshop a week or two ago where I got to spend a lot of time with a couple of very awake people. And then, of course, last episode we talked to Susanna Marie, and they often say similar things about what life is like without fear and anxiety. And in some ways, it feels very different. And in some ways, it feels very natural. You know, as you said, they have challenges, but they aren't lost in a story about them. So life is very much this second, and now this second, and now this second. And that's how you eat challenges, or you eat an elephant one little bite at a time. And
Right.
it's important to get a sense of what that's like. I'm listening to a book by Jan Fraser called When Fear Falls Away. And this was a woman who was a little bit of a spiritual seeker for sure, but one day she just woke up completely. And she no longer had any fear and anxiety, where she had a history of being very fearful and anxious. And she says, you know, I still want good things for my children. You know, I still care for them. That hasn't fallen away. But I realize I don't have control, and so if there's not something I have to decide right now, I just rest into beingness, and I don't worry the way I used to.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that really does say it.
Hmm. And the same thing with a lot of our other fears, you know, whether fear of old age or death or money, a lot of them really are are just thought patterns about the future that if you were just present in your life now, you'd realize they're completely unnecessary and not needed.
That's right.
I mean, when was the last time you needed fear? You know, have you been chased by any elephants lately?
No, I think you only need it in certain physical situations where you're in physical danger. Certainly, um, in something like a jungle or forest with wild animals, or the concrete jungles of New York City where I live, there are dangers, and so yes, I might feel a little fear if some very large vehicle I didn't notice before was heading towards me. But that's different. That's not. There's no story there. There's just, oh, I better get out of the way. Boom, and you do it.
Yeah,
It would be
yeah.
beautiful if all fear and anxiety were treated that way. Oh, okay. It's like, Locke Kelly talks about it as a telephone call. And maybe there's danger and maybe there's not, but you answer the call and you say, hello, what is it? Oh, okay. That's something I really need to act upon. And then you do it. Or you say, oh, no, that's not really anything. That's just imaginings of the future. So I don't really need to take that call.
Yeah. I've been using a method that kind of is like that recently, called the dismissing technique.
Oh, yeah?
And the technique is you feel the fear or anxiety, you notice kind of like where it is in your body, and then you kind of quickly decide whether you need to continue feeling it, which almost never is the case.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, okay, I got the call, thank you, got the message. And then you say, thank you for being here. I no longer need you. You can leave now.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
it's
like it.
kind of using your intention and those words. Thank you for being here. I no longer need you. You can leave now. And then I take a deep breath and I say, I kind of like blow it away. Like, okay, you got the message. You you hanging around is completely counterproductive at this point. And it's actually been a very helpful technique at times. Now you got to be careful that you're not always just pushing away uncomfortable emotions, because another part of awakening is allowing yourself to feel stuff. So the first step is you do feel it.
Right.
But the necessity of spending a lot of time in fear and anxiety seems to be just a habit.
That's right. And you're absolutely right. It's totally key to feel the fear or to feel any emotions. But the question is, where do you feel it? And emotions really are chemical. So they're felt in the body. And when you feel them in the body, you take your attention away from the story in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where healing is by giving the attention simply to your body and allowing it to be however it is right now. And the other thing you reminded me of when you talked about it is the old saying, feel the fear, but do it anyway, which
Mm-hmm.
is good advice up to a point, but it never totally worked for me because the do it anyway part, if I didn't do it, then I would get down on myself, and that would be just one other thing that I failed at. And so I came up with this advice that I would give myself. Feel the fear. Whether you do it anyway is immaterial.
Yeah.
So you would feel the fear. You would allow it to be there. You would drop the clutching and tensing against it and the strategies to prevent it from happening. Drop into the body. Notice it's happening. Then, once you do that, you can make a decision on whether to act or not. And you may act and you may not. And either way, it doesn't give you another thing to criticize yourself over, to be down on yourself over, or to worry about, or to be anxious about.
Yeah. Yeah. The last topic I want to bring up before you lead a guided meditation is a lot of people have fear about awakening
Ah, yes, I've
or
heard
losing
tell.
their ego.
Yes.
Now, I find that kind of funny because most of the time that I have had awakening experiences, I go, man, this is fantastic. How could I be afraid of this?
Hmm.
But it seems to be a thing. And what are your thoughts about it?
Well, I have heard a lot of people talk about that, and I do think it's a real thing, and I do think it's a fear of loss of control.
Hmm.
Uh, because we think that we will not be able to interact with people in a normal way, or that we'll forget to eat, or something like that. And it's not a fear I have, so I don't have first person insight into that fear. How about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I don't really either. I mean, sometimes I get ego resistance to more awakening, but I wouldn't say fear because in the awakening experiences that I have, it's very positive. I'm able to function. Um, and in a way, I wouldn't say I have less control. I'd say that I see how little control I normally have. So in a certain way, I have more control. Right now, I just have the illusion of control. Then at least I am more clearly seeing, wow, I hardly control anything. And that seems to work for me.
Right. Well, seeing things as they are can actually be a comfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other
and
thing
and you
is,
let go of imagined control, and then you have kind of more of the feeling of control of having a solid place of peace that you're coming from.
right, right, absolutely. And I had another thought on that subject. A lot of people's fear of losing the sense of a separate self revolves around the fear that their personality, which they've grown to care about and love, will go away. And it actually doesn't go away. it's not like the personality all of a sudden disappears. It's that it becomes, instead of something that you completely identify with, it becomes something like your favorite character in a novel or a movie. You can enjoy the character traits of that person, but you know that that's not your true nature, your true identity. That it's just something that you, as awareness, experience.
Yeah. Like you're wearing a costume.
Yes, sure. Or you're, because I mean, like when you watch a movie and you identify with the protagonist, you really start to feel like those things are happening to you.
Yeah.
And when you can start to see life as, wow, there's this character, a very interesting character that I care about, and these things are happening to them, but I can step away and realize that all those things that are happening in a vast, huge, infinite, clear, open, allowing field of awareness, and identify with that. And then it's joyful, but you don't have to get rid of all the personality quirks. They're just there. They're just another thing to be enjoyed in all that is.
Hmm. That sounds pretty good. Maybe you can help bring us into that experience more fully with a guided meditation.
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. This guided meditation I call From Story to Body to Spacious Awareness. So here goes. First, if you're not driving, close your eyes and take a couple of slow, easy, deep breaths. And allow yourself to relax. Think of a time when you've felt fear or anxiety. It can be a specific incident that triggered it, or it can be simply the memory of how it felt to be afraid or anxious. If you're feeling fear or anxiety right now, then there's no need to recall a past instance. You can simply use what's happening right now. Usually when fear and anxiety arise, they arise with a story about the circumstances around them. If there's a story that comes to mind, notice that it's there. Acknowledge its presence. Notice the words and images that come with it. Notice that the story is mostly made up of words, an inner monologue or dialogue running through your mind. Ask yourself, where in me is this story appearing? If it was a movie playing within you, where is it playing? Most of us sense this story to be appearing in our minds, somewhere inside our heads. Get a sense of the story playing out in your head. Now imagine that the story is fading. The images are getting slightly blurry and less distinct. And the dialogue on the soundtrack is growing softer and softer. As the words grow quieter, drop your attention down below the neck. Notice how your shoulders feel. Notice how your chest feels. Notice how your heart feels. Notice how your belly feels. Notice all the sensations you feel in your body. Give these sensations, whatever they may be, your full attention, without trying to change them in any way. Notice the sensation of weight against the chair, or floor, or bed. Notice the feeling of the temperature on your skin. Notice all the sensations of your body. Notice all the sensations your body is feeling right now. And notice them without words. Just raw, pure sensation. No story attached. Ask yourself, can I allow however my body is feeling right now? Can I allow all my sensations to simply be without analysis, without story, without words? Just be with your body. Now ask yourself, who or what notices my body and its sensations? Is it my body? Or is it a vast spaciousness in which all sensations and perceptions appear? Can you, ever so slightly, shift your sense of you, of the I that is the witness of all your experience? Can you ever so slightly shift your identity from your body and its sensations to the spacious awareness in which all of your experience appears? Be that. And now, take another slow, easy, deep breath. And at your own pace, open your eyes.
You're good at that, Brian.
Why, thank you, Jonathan. Feel good?
I feel better. I now feel excellent, as a matter of fact.
Excellent. Yes, that is one of my favorite words. I notice I use it a lot. My other one is lovely. I love that word.
Lovely. I use the word groovy, which shows you how old I am.
Oh, that's a cool word. It's so funny. Yeah. Groovy was, I remember when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, anything good was boss. That shows you how old I am. That is so boss.
Wow.
Now
yeah, you're older.
I'm older.
I never got that one.
You never got that. Well, of course, that also might be an East Coast thing. Might not have made it to the West.
Now I hear awesome. So that was an awesome meditation, just to be up to date. And we have about 35, 40 guided meditations on the Awareness Explorers website. And they're all really good from different teachers and ourselves. And hope you explore those. Hope you explore the website. Hope you explore yourself. Hope you explore spaciousness. And what are you hoping people explore, Brian?
I'm just hoping that they explore the vastness, the allowing emptiness, their true nature.
Yeah.
It's
In
dope.
this crazy world, the more we can access that, the more I think we can help the world situation as well.
Yeah.
So tell your friends, tell your family, tell yourself, and keep coming back for more. As always, keep exploring.
Keep exploring. Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or your favorite podcast app. And we'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link on Facebook and with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.